Check, 1, 2. Alright, audio is good to go. So, I am actually going to redo this live tutorial I did with Yang and Third Strike again, because I was kind of disappointed. Not necessarily disappointed. There were a couple things that I wasn't entirely happy about with the first time I did this, so I'm going to go ahead and do it over again live, and also because I didn't upload it to YouTube either, so I kept kind of using Twitch to re-record a tutorial I already had done. So I'm going to get started in a little bit. I'm just going to go ahead and go over my notes that I have here before I begin. Meanwhile, you get to relax to the sounds of Sakura's theme in a remix fashion. Also, if anyone who watches live, you could go ahead and ask questions whenever you'd like, pertaining to Yang or Third Strike. If it is something that is going to come up at some point during the tutorial, I'll go ahead and answer the question then at the time when I get to that subject. Or if it's something I can answer immediately then. If not, I'm going to have time after I finish up all the material I have planned for this to answer any kind of questions about Yang or the game in general. It's even funny because I'm starting this tutorial off the same way I did last time with just having this picture up here. Okay, almost look good. Most of the stuff here, I think, is all good to go. Don't really see any need to add anything substantial. There's a couple different points and a little extra added perspective after playing the game more since I made this tutorial that I want to do this over again. I think we're good to go. So let me go ahead and get that set up. Get on out of here and head over to training mode. Alright. So if you guys are not, if anybody who watches this either live or on YouTube, if you haven't seen this before, this is going to be a pretty densely packed tutorial with lots of information going over just about every aspect of Yang you can think of, minus any kind of matchup. Matchup tutorials, and go in depth in that sense because oh geez, I didn't even realize I put the stun all the way up there. So let's get that to off for the time being. But as I was saying, this is going to be a Third Strike tutorial on Yang that is going to be packed with lots of character information, stemming from the very basics, going all the way up to the most advanced stuff that you can possibly think of with this character. There isn't going to be any kind of guide as far as matchups are concerned, because this is going to be a very, very long tutorial in itself. So adding matchups on top of that is just going to make this like a 24-hour sort of video. Well, maybe not necessarily, but it's still going to be excessively long and I'm still improving as a player myself, so I can't really say I can give definitive advice on every single matchup in the game. But at the very least, I can get you guys started if you're looking at maybe picking up this character at some point down the line. And also, this could be a good guide if you want to learn how to play against Yang, because you'll get an understanding of how he works, what his strengths and weaknesses are, so that way you can come up with a game plan to stop him if this is a character that you're having trouble dealing with. So before I get into everything proper, let's actually start off with some strengths and weaknesses of Yang. So the most obvious strength of his is the fact that he has dive kicks, much like Yun. And the reason why this is very good is because he has a kind of aerial mobility that most characters don't really have. There are, to some extent, you can make the argument for a character like Akuma, for instance, with his demon flips, but at the same time, he doesn't have the same kind of freedom as the twins do, because they can vary their aerial approach in all sorts of different ways, and they can switch up between just doing normal jump-ins and dive kicks to really keep your opponent guessing in terms of how to anti-air or whether or not you should, because they can use dive kicks for baits, and we'll get into that down the line. But having this ability to change your aerial approach is something that not a lot of characters have, and Yun and Yang can really use this effectively in ways that other characters can't. So the second strength of Yang's is that he has very high stun output. Actually, I did change this improperly. Let's go ahead and put stun to normal, kind of just a display. So the big thing with him is that, as you can see with EX slashes, he's very good in terms of building stun over time, and he has a couple other good normals like this, for instance, sustaining fierce. Then you have something like this combined together, does a lot of good stun. So he's a character who doesn't do tons of damage right off the bat, but with this with the toolset he has good opportunities to build stun. And furthermore, the third point I want to say is that to kind of combine this, is that he has a really good tool set to dealing with constant pressure. So he has the ability to dash up against opponents after they get knocked down to close the gap in and continue the pressure. Particularly with EX slashes. Oh, my bad. The only thing is that I'm using the Korean stick, so my execution with this is going to be kind of shitty. There we go. So, in any kind of situation, Yang, when he gets slashes, particularly when he gets EX slashes, can close the gap on his opponent and continue onwards with the offensive pressure. And even if a character is blocking, for instance, he has mix-ups after getting a slash on block. He has good confirms for combos, both on a high and a low set, as far as like a high-low mix-up. So he can confirm off of this to saying leg kick, and we'll get into the combos a little bit as well to show you. So he has that. Of course, he has crouching medium kick, which is pretty much his main normal that you'll see pretty much every single Yang use extensively in the ground game. And he also has a command grab too, which again leaves them, when you're constantly pressuring them with slashes and then with throws, you have ways of keeping your opponent kind of just sitting back and holding down back the entire time. And when that happens, you come in with a command grab and you just go ahead and hit him with a pretty simple combo for extra damage and plenty of stun. Now, on top of all that, Yang also has a lot of meter that he can use for EX slashes, particularly if you're using SA2. We'll go over that a little bit later on as we go over supers themselves. But having 2 bars of super to use for EX slashes means that he can get these opportunities very quickly. He also builds meter very quick if I go ahead and switch the training over to normal just to kind of show you. So you just see right there, let me just go ahead and deplete it even further. If I do something like this, you can see that the first slash of the normal slash combo does a lot of meter buildup, which in terms of, like, if you didn't have any meter at all, it doesn't really take very long to get your first EX slash, and if you're constantly putting pressure on them, grabbing them, you're going to build up lots of meter and have a couple of EX slashes stored at any given time. So when you do get that opportunity, you get your one knockdown, you can go in again and perhaps even get a second, and at that point the stun meter is already going to be up pretty high, and your opponent is going to be a little bit more anxious on defense and probably more willing to go ahead and try to reversal to get out, because one more mix-up potentially is going to cause stun and probably the round at that point, depending on how much damage you've done to them beforehand. And lastly, another thing that's also good about Yang is that he doesn't really require any kind of high-level execution to play. He's very simple. In fact, that a lot of his combos really are very simple, with something like close medium punch or crouch medium kick into slashes, or even just regular slashes too, if you want. And that's very easy to confirm. Pretty decent damage. And even if you can't do something like some of the more fancy confirms, like you can do this or that, and then EX slashes, you don't really need those kinds of tools. There are some other like really specific combos that are a little tougher on execution, but as opposed to someone like Yun, where you have to be pretty good with the Ganajin juggles, and if you want to be particularly effective with them, you also have to be good with the post Ganajin juggles for the extra meter. Yang, you don't really have to worry about that. You don't really have to worry ever about confirming into super if you're using SA2, because quite frankly, nobody really uses the super itself except for very specific situations. And again, I'll go over that once we go over the supers. You can really, the biggest thing is just understanding, like, is getting the combos down, which are really simple to do, even though I just messed it up there again. Sorry, once again, these Korean sticks, I swear. There you go. So yeah, the bottom line with him is that he doesn't really have any kind of tricky combos, very simple, and if you just utilize those two combos and EX slashes, or if you want to do with the crouching leg kicks and stand leg kicks, not very hard to do in the grand scheme of things. So that will cover all of his strengths, and now it's time to talk a little bit about what are some of his downsides, because he does have a few, and which is a lot of the reason why he's considered a high tier, but if you ask a lot of people, he may be 6th or 7th on the ultimate list. It kind of all depends by opinion, but he usually falls around there, and there's a couple of things that drag him down a little bit in the tier list. So one of his biggest weaknesses is that he does have anti-air tools, but they are rather inconsistent. So he does have something like close medium kick, which you look at it and you think to yourself, okay, that's a pretty obvious anti-air. Two problems with a move like this is that it is kind of slow to start, so you can't do it on reaction. Also, because this is a close medium kick, you have to be in a particular range where this will actually even activate. So if your opponent is doing like a shallow jump in, so a jump in where it doesn't come in very deep over you, it kind of just lands right in front of you, so like this, that's not actually going to get you to get a close medium kick if you're standing at the range where Ryu is. You got to actually move up a bit to get it to work. And even on top of that, jump-ins have a tendency with this move to reach over the foot and hit Yang. So what you'll often find is that that move will trade, and in this kind of case it's actually considered trading down because the jump in normal is going to do more damage than this. So yeah, on the one hand you do get an anti-air there, but it's not foolproof. You can't use this and just expect to just consistently hit people with it like you would if you were to use the DP. He does have other tools though, such like Crouching Fierce, where the second part of it does hit above his head, and that can kind of catch people who are doing like a crossover, or somebody who's kind of like directly on top. It can hit, but once again, like the timing of that is kind of funky, so that's kind of hard to do in a pinch when you're reacting to something. Then there's also this, which is he has his roll kick, where we go over specials, but particularly the light kick version just goes up instantly. You can kind of think of this as his DP of sorts, but again, it's slow to start up. The other thing too is that, kind of like with the close medium kick, this can sometimes trade in particular situations with the jump in. Like if it's a little bit more of a cross up, this can trade there. And the biggest problem with this move actually is that you can't cancel out of it once you already do this move. So if you are kind of committed to go ahead and anti-air someone because you believe they're actually going to jump in on you and do it normal, if it turns out to be an empty jump and they're looking for a parry, you have no way to cancel out of this and mess up their parry timing. Once you do this, it's pretty much over. You are committed to this 100%. And in a game like this, where higher level opponents will sometimes jump in on you and empty jump buffer with a parry buffer towards the end of the jump, expecting you to do something like a DP, other characters get around this by canceling to another special. Or if it's like a normal, for instance, like if it's like a Crouching Fierce with Ryu, you can cancel that into another, you can cancel to a special, or if you're doing a special, you cancel a super. With Yang, you don't have that option, so if they parry this, it's over, and you're going to take a pretty good punishment once you land off of that move. Now, the other big problem with Yang is that he is tied with his twin brother Yun for the second lowest health in the game. The only other character who has lower health than them would be Akuma. So, with that in mind, any kind of situation where you're trading down, like I was saying with this, you're actually losing pretty badly in that sense because you don't have as much health to play with. So, trading down, while another character with standard health might not have a problem with it, with a character like Yang, it becomes increasingly worse. And also because of this, characters who can hit really hard with a super combo or a typical like a combo with EX meter, for instance, like so if we do Chun hitting you with Super 2, or even if Dudley hits you with EX machine gun blow and gets a good juggle combo afterwards, that's really going to hurt. And even normals to an extent. Certain normals in the game can really hurt them pretty badly. So you have to play this character. He's more like a glass cannon type of character. He's got a very good offensive set, offensive tool set. The only problem is that his health doesn't allow him room to make a couple mistakes here and there and get hit, because he's going to feel a lot worse than other characters in the game, except for Akuma, of course. So you have to be a little bit careful in your approach. Don't accept trades. Be particularly careful with anybody fishing for supers, because that's going to really put you at a deficit. And while Yang does have a pretty good offensive tool set, he has damage in small bursts similar to Makoto, but Makoto's mix-up game is just a little bit more oppressive than his. So when he finds himself a little bit in a life lead or a life disadvantage, he has to put in a lot more work to close the gap than the other character. Like if it was Ken, for instance, just one good super, and that's it. The life lead is kind of just negated at that point. But with Yang, it's a little bit tougher. So just be careful. So on top of the fact that his health isn't particularly great, his defense also is not great either. Outside of supers, Yang actually lacks in invincible reversals. Occasionally what you'll see is people doing this on Wake Up, and it'll seem as if that Yang actually is invincible on this move, when in fact it's just a very, very fast startup. But if you were to meaty him properly, that move actually gets beat up by everything. So in cases where you're attacking Yang and he gets away with this, it's really just the fact that you didn't get a good meaty on him with proper timing, and he was just able to squeak that move out. But the only thing that he really has to get himself out of trouble in that kind of situation with invincibility would be with his supers. Well, with SA1 and SA2 particularly, because SA3 is a different kind of super, and we'll get into that. So, in that sense, Yang, when you're playing Yang, you have to be very sound defensively. He does have, even though he lacks invincible reversals, he does have two tools when waking up that he can kind of use. If your opponent is trying to guess high-low in terms of what you're going to do with a guess parry. So, you have close medium punch to wake up with, and you also have crouching light kick. Both of these can eventually get you a combo. Obviously, this can get you into slashes, and this gets you EX slashes. So you can sort of keep your opponent honest with that in mind. Also, another thing too is that one of the universal properties of Third Strike is that everybody has 6 frame vulnerability to throws. Crouching light kick is a 4 frame startup, so he can use this to essentially beat out someone trying to throw you, because this will actually hit them before that 6 frames of vulnerability is up. So you can, if they're looking to throw you, you can throw this out as opposed to just doing a throw tech to get your opponent off of you. Also, then you turn the tides over. So, not to say that Yang doesn't have any defense, it's just that he's extremely limited at what he can do. And really, it's more going to be about taking your time and looking for the opportunity to get a good parry in, maybe do a jump, like jump out of the corner and create some space that way. Or if you need to panic, you have 2 supers to work with. Another downfall of his. This is a little slight of a downfall, but I consider this a weakness to an extent. Is that his dashes aren't really that great. On the one hand, stuff like his backdash is good because it travels very far, covers fairly quickly too for the distance it travels. The only problem with that is you can't, besides creating distance away from your opponent if you want to get out and escape from something, you don't have that ability to be very creative with your dashes and use this, like create just a little bit of space and then dash in. Like for instance, you'll see Shotos do a back dash and forward dash, and you'll even see Makoto do this as well to just get out of range of a normal, let you whiff and dash back in. Because this is such a long range, Yang doesn't have that ability, and his forward dash is pretty good in terms of distance, but it doesn't recover very fast. Lasts out there for a little bit, so this is a dash where you can't really kind of just like use it to, if you're out here for instance, come in and close the gap, unless your opponent is really not paying attention and has bad reactions. There's no reason why someone sees you doing this and they don't make you pay for it with like a crouching medium kick from a Shoto or any other kind of normal that they can think of depending on the character. I mean, it is kind of good for dashing under jump-ins, especially if it's a little bit of an ambiguous cross-up, you can dash out, and it gets you out of there pretty safely. So it's not like his dash, particularly his forward dash, doesn't have use. It's just that it is not very versatile in what you can do with it. So outside of that, I mean, when you do get some knockdowns, you can use this to close the gap depending on the character or depending on the spacing. So it's fine for that, but like I said, it's a limited tool that is not as flexible as other characters' dashes. And then lastly, the final weakness I would say for Yang is that he has a very linear style of play that if an opponent is quite good at turtling, then it becomes very frustrating for Yang to get in and do some damage. Of course, Yang has no projectiles. His slash doesn't cover a lot of distance. Other specials really don't cover much distance at all, except for this. But honestly, if anybody does that, they're just gonna. If you see you do that, they're just gonna block it right away. And it's very easy to react to. So really, the bread and butter for Yang is to get in close, because obviously that gives you the room to start with your slash pressure. It puts you in range both of throws and command grabs. So because of that, some players will get a little bit defensive at least to start and try to force you to make your way in on them and kind of show your hand as to how you want to approach this. So because of that, you know, Yangs can kind of fall under the trap of just like coming in, dive kicking right away, and occasionally doing a jump in, or walking into crouch and medium range and just like start doing this the entire time. And if your opponent is at a pretty high level, they're going to pick up on those tendencies real quick. And the problem is that there isn't a ton that Yang can do about it outside of really stepping up their own game and learning to walk into a normal range like this and waiting for your opponent to do a move so that you parry with a parry and then use that opportunity to get in. I mean, occasionally you can throw out you do some tricky stuff here and there to try to get your opponent to flinch, but if they are a little bit more of a defensive style player, or if they're playing a character who excels in this sense, like Remy or Urian's actually even a better example of this, then it kind of becomes tough for Yang to make his way in, because he wants to be in this range at the very least and move in even closer to be effective with the command grabs and slashes. So in that sense, they can, an opponent can essentially make your Yang become like a one-note type of Yang. So you have to be very careful with that, and it becomes particularly difficult with matchups like with Shoto's, particularly Ken, who can definitely vary it up with crouching medium punch, crouching medium kick, standing roundhouse, and even at that point, like, kind of causing you to hesitate to move in, and then that's when they move in on you with like a forward dash. So all in all, I would say those are all of his weaknesses for the character. So if I were to recommend this character to a certain type of player, it would be the kind of player who does like to be much more on the offensive side of things, who rather be the one to be the aggressor, move in and kind of take control of the situation, with there being some room for a little bit of like a change of pace, where maybe you come in, you start getting aggressive, and then every once in a while maybe slow it down a little bit when your opponent wants to try to like jump out of the corner, and you catch them panicking, you hit them with stuff like this, or you snuff them out of the air with medium kick. And then you can just continue on your offense, kind of fluster your opponent in a similar way that Makoto does it. I wouldn't recommend this character for anybody who would rather be a little bit more defensive and play a bit more on a passive side. because Yang doesn't have the tools to make that last for an entire match. He can have his spots here and there where he gets a little bit more defensive, or he wants to slow down the pace just to keep the opponent guessing a little bit, but he doesn't have the tools to make it last because, as I said, his anti-airs aren't particularly great. They're very inconsistent. Not really a whole lot of normals that are good for keeping your opponent out, minus something like this and sweep to an extent. A lot of his normals really excel at a closer range, so you do want to kind of close the gap and start moving forward on them, because if they start coming in on you, it's going to be kind of difficult to react to it in time, and even then, like, you don't have really good tools like DPs to kind of catch them in that. So yeah, I would definitely say that this is not the kind of character if you are a more defensive oriented player. So now that we've got a general overview of what makes Yang tick, let's start going over all of his normals. So he has a standing jab. It's a standing jab. It's nothing particularly great. Nothing to see here. Crouching jab, though, actually not too bad of a tool. It's got a pretty good range, as you can see here. In cases where you want to keep your slash pressure up, you can use this to like set up a crouching medium kick at times because of its advantage on block. Even after a slash, you can continue your pressure if you don't know what your opponent's going to be doing with something like this. Also, in terms of Oki pressure, if you're kind of unsure what your opponent is going to do at any single time, if you use a jab at max range and they're trying to parry, you can actually punish their parry like this. So there is a little bit of use for it. It's very selective, but again, it's actually, I would say it's more useful than a lot of crouching jabs out there. So because of its range and because of how it complements your pressure, particularly after slashes on block. Then we have his light kick. Light kick is actually pretty good. I mean, the range itself, quite far. Kind of reminds me of Akuma's standing light kick in Alpha 2. Not quite as far, but I mean it's up there, considering the ranges in Third Strike. This is also useful because if you cancel the EX slash, it does combo, even though right there I'm messing it up. There we go. Now let me just go ahead and change training mode over to the stun being, I will turn it off, and then the gauge will go back to infinite for the time being. There we go. So yeah, it's a good way to, it's something you can use to go into EX slashes for a combo, and conversely the same thing goes with his crouching light kick. So both of these give you the same combo. Of course, one has to be blocked low. So this is another way to kind of keep pressure up in terms of like after slashes, keeping your opponent guessing. You can also chain it into another crouching light kick, so you can confirm it into a combo like that when you're after a knockdown. If you want to do something like this and you don't want to just do EX slash willy-nilly and waste a meter, you can confirm it with a second one. I had to take a little sip of a beverage there. On top of that, it is plus on block, and the pushback, if an opponent does block it, for instance, you can see not a whole lot. So this is actually good for keeping the distance. Whenever you kind of want to do something like a setup with the command grab here, you can just do this and then immediately go into it, and you will still be in range for the command grab. And then of course you can also do card throws if you want. From there we'll go over card throws, and then you could even just use that to just walk forward and continue the pressure there. Now next we're going to go over his medium punch. So He does have a close medium punch, which is this. Another good tool, cancels into regular slashes for a combo on top of EX slashes. So this is one of the options you have if you want to just go ahead and use this on block for slashes and not waste meter. So obviously if they do get hit with it, you can confirm it, and if they're blocking, then you can continue slash pressure from there. It's also pretty good in terms of hit it with an advantage on block, because then you can, even if you want to kind of switch things up, don't always cancel the slash and do like this. You can walk forward afterwards. You can, you know, do like the reverse of what I was doing here, which is go this and do this. You have some options with the frame advantage, and you could also confirm this with standing light kick into another combo there. So again, if you don't want to, if you want to have that one extra hit for a confirm in the EX slashes, you can do that. His forward medium punch is kind of interesting. I sort of downplayed this normal the first time I did the tutorial, but this time around I've found it to be kind of useful. So the thing with Yang is that usually at this range, pretty much every Yang is going to do crouch and medium kick, and it's a downfall that even I struggle with at times against some really good opponents, where like I always want to do this because I want to do this in the slash. I want to try to pressure them, and because of that, they're always going to parry low at this range. But standing medium punch can only be parried high. So at times when you're kind of just always doing this, it's good to do this to catch them attempting to parry you, keep them honest. That way, you can start mixing this back in, and maybe even cause them to hesitate a little bit and walk in even further, because they're still trying to parry and they want to kind of take a guess. So doing this to keep them honest is good for that reason. Beyond that, it's an okay normal. It does, one of the small drawbacks to it is that it does move Yang forward. So if you are looking to maintain a particular range, even after using this move, you have to be careful with it, because it does move them in a little bit closer. And also, if you do this, you can put yourself in danger of getting inside of somebody's like crouch and medium kick range. If you're kind of just doing this willy-nilly, maybe expecting a dash, or if you just simply misjudge the spacing for this, then you just draw yourself into your opponent. So just be a little bit careful with how you use this and when you use it. And then it also is part of the target combo, which I'll go over with in a section just after the regular normals. Crouch and medium punch. This is the normal that you want to use if you want to stand back and build some meter, because it builds a pretty good amount of meter and recovers very fast, much faster, something like this. And of course, you don't get the option to do a close medium punch either, which this would be good to whiff, but that's never going to happen. But either way, crouch and medium punch, this is good for building meter. It also is +2 on block, so it is a good frame trap setup. So if you go ahead and meaty this, and I mean this is on quick rise, but if you meaty it properly, you can use that for frame traps. Like for instance, you'll see people do this and then into close fierce, and then into slashes, because that's a good solid frame trap there. Or you can use this to set up demand grab as well. Meaty that, use the advantage on block to just go ahead and get the command grab in there. So it has a little bit of use, but as far as like using it to poke, I mean, there's really no reason to use this over crouching jab in some aspects. So I would say just use this for the whiff and use this as a meaty when you want to. So now we have his medium kicks. So he has the close medium kick, which is a launcher. you can't cancel out of this with any kind of special. You can super jump cancel it. So in mid-screen, you can get stuff like this. Oh, my bad. There we go. So you do get a little bit of mid-screen combos there, and that's also like a reset. Or you can do something like this as well. In the corner, you can do that combo, which is doing 2 of them after they'll walk forward, and then I'm just doing that probably a little bit too early. There we go. So you have that, and of course you have this in the corner as well. Like I said before, not a particularly great anti-air because it can get snuffed out with an opponent jumping in on you if you do this a little late, and also depending on the hitbox of their normal, it can cause it to trade because it'll hit Yang in his head, and he also has his hurt box does extend with the leg too, so it could also be catching that. So that's really when you want to be using this. This can be good sometimes if you're moving up and maybe somebody's trying to low parry. This is a good tool to use in that situation. It's also good against a character like Urian if they want to wake up with a headbutt. You can use this as your meaty pressure, and they'll just be juggled right there. If you do happen to walk under an opponent when they're jumping in, you can get away with, go ahead and walk under and then do a medium kick and actually hit it cleanly. So that's like more of the preferable way to use this in anti-air. But then you also have characters like Akuma where they're using a demon flip, and if you time it right, you can actually beat the demon flip with a close medium kick. So there are some uses for it in that regard. And there's another little trick regarding his command grab that we'll go over in a later section. So beyond that, then we have his regular standing kick. Can only be parried high, of course. Pretty good range. It's a particularly useful tool if you have your opponent cornered and you want to snuff them out from doing a jump to get out of the corner. So if you use this preemptively, they can just catch a jump. This will keep them grounded. Not really good to use as an anti-air itself though, because his hurt box does extend with the leg, so not really good in that kind of use. This is also a fairly decent normal if you kind of want to play the game of getting into like this range and having them guess, because if you're doing crouch and medium kick a lot and you want them to try to go ahead and keep them honest with something that can be high parried, this can kind of do it. This can also be used to go over some crouching normals, like crouching medium kick for instance, like this. You can reach over it with this. But again, the other problem too is that because it hits as high as it does, there's the possibility that an opponent can still go under this attack. So it's not as good as like reused medium kick, which hits just like waist high, where it'll still go over a crouching normal and hit them on their crouching hitbox. For Yang's medium kick, it's not really quite that consistent, but it can be used on taller characters. And like I said, it's good to snuff people out from jumping out of the corner. Now we have crouch and medium kick, and this is the one normal that you absolutely have to incorporate in your game, no matter what you do, no matter what super you use, because this is your main tool for getting into slashes. It's pretty good on startup. It's got a fairly good range on it as well. It's not quite as long as a Shoto crouch and medium kick. It's a little bit shorter, but still a good range. And of course, it keeps them in range for slashes. At times, you may have to use a medium or a heavy punch slash to close that gap if you do it at absolute tip range. But nevertheless, this is your main tool to catch them when somebody isn't guarding low into slashes. You can also, as I'm here, doing here, as when I'm not doing that, buffer a slash while using crouch and medium kick. So if you're anticipating a dash in from any kind of character, like at this range, and you want to keep them honest, you can do crouch and medium kick and also buffer a slash. That way, once it does land, you get the slash automatically, and that's your confirmed to get the combo and punish their attempt to close the gap in on you. And this is the only other normal, as I said before, the only other normal besides close medium punch that allows you to cancel into just normal slashes and get a combo. Because like I said before here, you can't get a normal slash combo with these. You have to expend EX meter. And quite frankly, sometimes when you're doing this, you're not even confirming, you're just doing this, and if you happen to see it land, then you continue with the slashes. But here, you never have to worry about spending meter and still get a combo. And you can use that as your confirm, and obviously from here, even if it's blocked, then you go into your slash pressure. So, very important tool for Yang. Definitely going to be the normal you're probably going to end up using the most. So this is, if there's one normal you absolutely have to learn to use, it's going to be this. And incorporate it into your gameplay. Now, moving on to Fierce Punch. He has a close Fierce Punch. It's a 2-hitting normal, like you see here. The first hit of the 2 is actually special cancelable. So you can go into slashes here, and I guess I should have corrected myself a little bit by saying that this is, you have 2 normals to go into slashes. Technically, this is the 3rd, but only if you get the first hit. And to be perfectly honest, if you're going to be using any normal up close, you're usually going to end up using close medium punch to go into slashes. Close Fierce Punch, most of the time when you use it, you're actually using it for the 2 hits to catch somebody attempting to parry, because they'll parry the first hit, maybe get thrown off and not see the second hit coming and get hit by the second. Although there is a particular weakness with this, even in that idea, which is that if you parry the first hit of this, you can then throw Yang before the second hit comes out. So this is just like a tool that can't catch people off guard parrying, but they can parry throw it. And even if not, using this to kind of close the gap and continue some pressure and be plus on block and get some spacing, it's good for that. But you never use the first hit like this unless you're setting it up with a frame trap. And then there's particular instances where you would want to use the first hit of the close heavy punch to beat out certain reversals. Outside of that, it's just a pretty good like anti-parry tool. Now moving on to his regular Fierce Punch. A little bit better of a tool in terms of, like as I was saying with medium kick, to go over lows a little bit and hit the opponent, because as you can see, his whichever foot is going to be towards the front does extend his hurt box a little bit, unlike here where his plant foot doesn't go forward at all. So you do lunge a bit, and it does move your hurt box up a bit. So you can still end up getting hit by a low attack if it's spaced improperly, or if you do this a little late, because this can preemptively hit low attacks, and this can only get parried high. Beyond that, it's a pretty good tool for dealing with neutral jumps. If an opponent is like in the corner, for instance, and they're neutral jumping to get away from a throw, you can use this as they land and snuff out their jump in if they decide to use an attack on the way down. It does a good amount of stun, so there's that as well if you kind of want to catch them off guard with a high parry and get a good chunk of stun. And can kind of be used in reset situations, like if if I can get this to land. So you can use that with palm to get a reset and also a pretty good chunk of stun damage on top of it. Close Fierce, again, 2 hitting normal, not special cancelable or super cancelable. If it does hit, it's a 2-hit combo with both hits. The second hit of it, where the arm extends up, will hit above him. So as I said earlier, it can be used as an anti-air of sorts in specific situations, and also if you anticipate it properly. Otherwise, this actually isn't too bad of a poke. You can kind of use this in matchups like a Urian or Hugo. It's not bad to use every once in a while to kind of throw your opponent off and hit them with a poke that they're not expecting. Or it's another good normal to throw out if their hurt box extends in you, and because he's not moving forward, unlike with this, you can kind of use this safely as a tool to, kind of hit them on the way in. Now moving on to his roundhouse. Yeah, you're never gonna really use this normal for what it is. Maybe occasionally if you want to really throw out a poke that they're not expecting, that can only be parried high, sort of like this, and has similar functionality, just hits harder. You can use that. The only problem is it's quite slow to start up, so it is a little bit telegraphed, and opponents will pretty easily parry this, to be perfectly honest with you. It does move you a little bit forward afterwards, just a slight bit, but nevertheless, and that movement forward happens after the move is already out. So you're kind of protected in that sense, but still, it does close the gap a little bit, so be wary of that. And there's no cancel with it, so you're also committed to this move as well. So I wouldn't really recommend using this. There is a use for roundhouse in a different sense later on, which I'll cover, but you're never going to use the normal as it is like this. Then he has a sweep. It's a fairly good sweep. I mean, it draws him in forward a little bit, so it can hit at ranges just outside of crouch and medium kick range. Like so, you see right here, I'm just barely grazing Ryu's foot, and there I go with the sweep and I hit. So it has a little bit more range because of that forward momentum, but it is also quite punishable on block. So just be careful of using it because you will get a reversal super on you as a result if you get blocked. Now for what I call command normals, these are any kind of normal that have a directional input. Yang only has one, and that is this, which is forward medium kick. It is a overhead that I'm trying to say. So it does go over lows. There is an airborne state, but it actually happens much later than what you think. Even though his foot comes off the ground very early in the animation, he's not actually considered airborne until pretty much the time that the kick actually starts coming on its way down. So in its beginning portion here, in the very beginning, like the first 7 frames of it, you can still get hit in the grounded state. So for instance, if Ryu want to do crouch and medium kick into super, he can actually hit you here, and what happens is Yang will go back down to the ground when he gets hit, and he'll be in a grounded state this entire time when he does get hit. So that whole entire combo will connect, as opposed to if he does it later, he actually won't be able to do it because Yang will be airborne and go over normals. It's got a good amount of reach to it for an overhead. So if you do have an opponent that's kind of turtling again, and you want to open him up a little bit and keep him honest so that he's not always just holding down back like this, you can hit him with forward medium kick. it's also a little bit telegraphed, so if your opponent is keen to look out for this overhead, which good opponents will, they will know something like this is coming. They will look for it and react to it with a parry, typically speaking, not with anything like a DP, because the punish for the parry is much better than the DP itself. But they can also, if they're in a panic, they can also DP and will beat this out as well. So just be a little bit aware of that, but for the most part, it is a useful tool to have, and it's a good complement to the universal overhead. So you can catch them off guard with something like this, because with the universal overhead, you don't have as much range with it. The only problem with this is that there's no cancel to it, and it doesn't confirm into any kind of combo. Now for jumping attacks, jumping jab, it has a jumping jab. Nothing really to see here. Jumping light kick, again, if you see people using this, most of the time it's because they're trying to do a dive kick and do it a little too early. And because of that, if you happen to have this come out, it's not terrible of a normal. It's got a pretty good hitbox and can snuff some things out because of the way that his foot extends. But I mean, I wouldn't really recommend actually using this in a matchup like as a jumping tool per se. Jumping medium punch. It's similar to his jumping fierce. We'll cover both of these back to back right away. So these both have the same animation as in terms of how the move looks and how it hits. The only real difference is that jumping medium punch is faster, but his hurt box extends further up the arm than jumping fierce, which comes out just a little bit slower. So the trade-off is with jumping medium punch, you do get that hit at the end of the hand. The only difference is that more of his arm is vulnerable to attack. So if you do end up using this jump in and tie it with another jump in from another character, it has a good chance of losing because of that. Whereas jump fierce, the hitbox, his hurt box doesn't extend that much, and it rests a little bit further up beyond the forearm. So there's more chances of just having just the hitbox hit your opponent, and as opposed to using the jumping medium punch. Now we have jumping medium kick. We also have neutral jump medium kick, which at first glance you'll kind of see that there doesn't seem to be anything different between the neutral jump and the forward jump, or well, let's just say just the regular jump, because we're also going to account for backwards jump. But there is a small difference, and we'll go over this now, since there's no better time to talk about this. But the Yang has a target combo with jumping medium kick, which is this: jumping medium kick to down forward or down back. Really, it's down forward. And this can only be activated with a directional input, directional jump I should say. With the neutral jump, can't be activated at all. The target combo can actually also be activated jumping backwards as well. So here, if you see that, so here's my neutral jump fierce, as you'll see here as I'm jumping, that'll show that that's a neutral jump. And if I go like this, now you're going to see that I'm doing a directional jump. So now you'll see that I'm jumping backwards here, right? And then I can still get the target combo to come out if I'm jumping backwards. I wonder if I can get this to... I don't think there's a way I can, Oop. I'm trying to do an instant air and hit him, but I don't know if I could do that with this. For you, I could probably do it with, oh, there we go. That was kind of tricky, but really cool though. There you go. So now you see that I'm activating the target combo while jumping backwards. So anybody who's doubting me, looking at this video, like, oh, yeah, he was jumping forward, or he was doing some kind of like voodoo magic. Yeah, I was jumping backwards. So, yeah, the neutral jump medium kick, the only real difference with it is just that you don't get the target combo to come out. So that's the only noteworthy thing. Otherwise, both jumps are the same. And then that just leaves us with, I should have also mentioned, because I did do the jump heavy punch, that there is a jump pierce punch here, as you can see. He kind of just like gives the character the stop sign, your opponent the stop sign. It has a similar animation if you think about it to his standing fierce. So it's doesn't reach quite as far out, but it's pretty comparable, and it's a good tool with a neutral jump to preemptively jump out, throw this out if you're expecting your opponent to jump out of the corner. Or you can use it as an anti-air. Maybe you're anticipating a jump in of some sort. This is a good tool to hit them out of the air. And then that just leaves us with jump roundhouse. It's a pretty good jump in. Good damage. Can combo afterwards, and we'll do a little bit of combo. We'll talk a little bit about combos as we go along further on in this tutorial. But you can mess up, not mess up, but change up the timing a little bit. Hit it early, or you can hit it fairly deep, as its startup is quite quick. To play that little mind game of when you are going to use your jump in. If your opponent is looking to anti-air parry, this is a pretty good tool for that, to switch that up. Also with the jump and medium kick, so you have a couple tools at your disposal to keep your opponent guessing when looking at just a regular jump in as to throw off their anti-air parry game. You can kind of catch them sleeping, hit them with the target combo that they don't expect. You can switch up your timing with this, and even with jump and medium kick as well. So that will cover jump and normals. Outside of dive kicks, we can also briefly talk about this just on a very basic level. I'll actually talk about these more in depth in a further section, but you have a dive kick with all three kicks. So this is your leg kick, dive kick. It travels the least. It's also good for halting his momentum when jumping forward. So this same momentum you see going down from the neutral jump also applies to a forward jump. So he does sort of stop midair to an extent like that. So this is a good tool mainly to kind of throw off your opponent or to slightly close in the gap in certain situations like this, or if you want to land right in front of your opponent, you can use this. Medium kick, a bit of a downward angle. Again, it's kind of like a 45-degree angle, and you can use this tool to play that same kind of mind game to an extent with the leg kick, except at a further range. Otherwise, you're using this to attack your opponent, particularly at like this range when you're using dive kicks. And then you have the roundhouse, which carries a whole lot of forward momentum. Can travel quite far if you do any kind of jump in with like this, moving forward and going pretty far with that, and even more so with a super jump. This is like your real good attack tool when you really want to hit them hard and fast, when you're expecting your opponent maybe to do like a normal here, or like a crouch normal, and you want to just punish them for it right away as soon as they hit the button by coming in, hitting them on the ground, and then getting the combo off of that. So that's it as far as dive kicks on a very fundamental level. Like I said, we will talk more about those in a later section as far as how to use them effectively. So we'll also talk about target combos. I already went over this target combo. This is one of his. Again, so use this to kind of throw off your opponent when they're using when they're trying to do anti-air parries. Also, if you're just jumping in, want to get a combo when you know it's going to land cleanly, that's pretty good to use as well. So there's two other target combos. We have this one, which is light kick, medium kick, and heavy kick. A couple things to note about this that's a little interesting. One is that, as you can see, the second hit is the close medium kick, which happens regardless of how close you are. So when you're using this target combo, be a little bit aware of when you start it, because you can have this whiff. And also, even though yes, you are hitting them with close medium kick and the target combo, it doesn't have the launch property to it. So you can't just go like this and expect them to pop up. And then, of course, there is no knockdown with this target combo. This target combo, if you kind of want to pressure your opponent a little bit, you don't want to waste meter with, so if you want to use this in particular, pressure them a little bit, keep them honest, and you don't want to just go right into EX slashes and waste meter. You can use this as a way to confirm into a combo that gives you a little bit of damage and doesn't use meter. And even if you get this blocked, you are pretty safe because of the pushback. Another interesting thing about this too is that that third hit, which is the roundhouse, is actually the animation for Yun's standing roundhouse. You don't have access to that at all with Yang at all. Even though he has it in a target combo, there's no way to access that normal outside of the target combo, so you're stuck with this regardless. And now we have his other target combo of note to talk about, which is this, which is medium punch, heavy punch, and back heavy punch. It can be done both starting with close medium punch and far medium punch. You do want to be a little bit careful how you activate this, because as you've already seen, if you're just on the outside of medium punch range, the third hit of the target combo won't actually hit. You can still get the 1-2 here for a little bit of damage and a little bit of pushback, and this will always hit, but the third hit, on the other hand, not really going to hit as much. Another thing to note too is that we'll talk about specials, but the palm that you see here is different than the animation of his regular palm, and the main reason why that's a big difference in terms of how Yang plays is that he can get like at the very least like a reset with this, with just palm itself, but here, it doesn't recover in time to get any kind of follow-up. It does allow for a super combo. It can be canceled to a super combo, so that is a potential combo for you as well out of a target combo. The only thing I would advise against, or I wouldn't advise against, but be cautious with, is if you activate the target combo from standing medium punch range and you still get the hit in mid-screen. Whoop. Let's see if I can get the hit far up. Then get the super to come out. So you see that Ryu flies off a little bit before Yang catches up and hits him with the super. That combo can potentially drop with smaller characters like Ibuki, for instance, because of how her box is a little bit smaller when she falls away from the end of the target combo. It's always guaranteed to hit with close medium punch as a starter on any character because of how close they are. So it actually hits. It hits them so close that by the time that the super activates, they don't even fly away from him. But in terms of using the far medium punch, they do fly away, and at that point, you're running a little bit of a risk of it whiffing and wasting meter on a combo that doesn't work. So just be a little bit aware of that if you want to cancel into the super combo. And also, like I said before, be a little bit aware of your spacing for the last hit, because if you're too far, it doesn't have enough reach, and you're going to whiff in front of them, and they'll punish you for it. Now that we've gotten all that stuff out of the way, let's talk about specials. So we have the 3 slashes. You know, he has a version for each single slash. The light punch, medium punch, and heavy punch, all 3 of them have different ranges that they activate. And there's also different damage values for them as well. So with light punch, it's 4 for 12 in terms of damage number, 4 for 12. For medium punch, it's 5, 5, 13. And then for fierce punch, it's 5, 6, and 13. Do take note as well that the recovery times for slashes also will vary too. So typically speaking, when you have anybody combo with Yang, the very last slash is always going to be light punch, because that gives him the quickest recovery, so that he can do something like teleport, or he can do like a super jump to close the gap in and continue the offensive pressure. Otherwise, there's a little bit more recovery with that was the heavy punch version, that it's really not going to happen, and at that point the situation is neutral. And as a Yang player, you want to constantly keep that pressure up at all times, so you don't want to use a slash that will give you longer recovery times. So you pretty much always want to use light punch, at least as your finisher. And the reason why I say that is, and I say it in that way, is because with the slashes, you can, in the middle of the slash combo, you can change which version you use. So you can start with a heavy punch version, for instance, right? And then you can, at any point between the other 2 slashes, switch to the light punch to get that shorter recovery. So and also if you want to get a little bit more damage later on down the line, let's say you start a light punch, and you want to get that one little extra damage that might win you the round on the final hit, you can switch to that. And conversely, you can also throw in medium punches in there as well. All depends on what your goal is at the time, but you can switch in the middle of the slashes to do all sorts of to pretty much to switch for whatever purposes. Like if you want to get the quicker recovery or the extra damage, you have that versatility there. So do note that as you're playing him, that you can always switch over what kind of slash you use. Next, we're going to cover the command grab, which is the tension flip, as you see here. Doesn't do any damage, but it will affect scaling, and it does scale the impending combo because of the command grab. So no damage, but it does add scaling, and it does leave your opponent open for an attack when you land. Most of the time, you are going to see people use crouching medium kick into something like either medium punch or heavy punch slash. The reason why is because you're too far to reach with light punch slash, and you get that, or you use that as one of your opportunities to get EX slashes in. So this is a good tool when you've got your opponent backed up in a corner, you've already opened them up a little bit, and now you've got them hesitating to do anything but sit there and block, come up, command grab, and continue the pressure. Now the thing that's also kind of interesting about this is that, yeah, on the one hand you could be giving up the corner here, but because of the teleport that you have, you can still close the gap afterwards and continue the pressure, and then push him to the other corner as a result. So one of the nice things about Yang as a whole is that he doesn't require the corner to continue his pressure, because he can teleport in and close that gap, where other characters really can't do that as quickly as he can. So that's another nice little thing to talk about, to add into the what makes him Yang pretty good, is that he's effective any portion of the screen because of that. So when you are in a corner situation, don't hesitate to use this. Yeah, you're giving up the corner, but you also get the momentum off of EX slashes to continue pressure and push them to the other corner. Now, he also has the teleport, but I would say teleport with quotation marks because it doesn't actually function as a teleport. You can actually hit Yang out of this. It's actually, reality, this is just a dash that sort of, his character sprite sort of disappears off the screen, but he never actually leaves. So you can catch, hit them with like a crouching roll, for instance, while this happens, or you could also throw Yang out of this teleport. So it doesn't actually act as a true teleport. It's more along the same kind of properties as Ibuki's normal forward dash, which can do the same thing, which is it can go through an opponent and cross through, but it doesn't have any kind of property where she can't get hit out of it or can't get thrown out of it. Actually, there might be some airborne frames in that dash, but with Yang, there are no airborne frames, so you can throw him out of this. So if you want to use this as a tool to get out, I would be very cautious about that, because like I said, if you just happen to stumble into a normal, you're eating damage. But the main reason why you would use this teleport is, as you can see from as I was demonstrating this entire time with flash combos, is that you use that to close the gap afterwards. In particular with EX slashes, because you have extra time to catch up to your opponent. So that's mainly the use for this. It's really just to kind of keep the pressure up at all times and stay in your opponent's face. And there's going to be a little bit of a follow-up in terms of how you follow up your slashes. I'll get into that in a little bit more detail further on in this tutorial. There's also the roll, which is just a quarter circle forward motion, and any kick. The versions vary. Oh, you know what? I'm silly. Another thing I should have went over, I totally forgot to say, was EX slashes, as I mentioned. So let's talk about that real quick. And my apologies for totally skipping over EX slashes. But yeah, so EX slashes. There are normal slashes. There are 3. With EX, there are 5. A little bit of extra damage. The stun output for the EX slashes is also increased. So let me actually go ahead and turn stun on now, so I can kind of show you that stuff. Okay, there we go. So you can see here, normal slash combo, a little bit here, but EX slashes, considerable amount more. So this is going to be your main source of stun. Whoop. When dealing, when in the matchup. I mean, yes, you have other normals that can deal some stun here and there, but this is going to be the main thing you use to stun your opponent. It's also good for damage, and the other thing that makes the EX slashes a bit different is the way that your opponent gets knocked back. So if you see here, they pop up a little bit and corkscrew, as opposed to here, where they fall pretty much down flat and across. What this does is it gives them extra pop up in the air, and that gives them more time in the air for you to catch up to them. Allows you to close the gap much more efficiently with the medium kick slash, and we'll talk about this, but in general, it's better for follow-ups because of how much longer they spend in the air. That gives you more time to close the gap so you can continue pressure. Not to say that you can't do that with regular slashes, but that window is much smaller in comparison to the EX slashes. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, we'll talk about the rolls. So, light kick roll goes right up. It's like Yang's DP, more or less. Then you have the medium kick and the heavy kick versions. Both of these have different distances of where the roll actually takes place. Heavy kick is almost all the way at full screen. Because you can kind of see here, it activates just a little bit before it hits Ryu here. But this is the longest of them in terms of their standards. And then, of course, you have EX, which will wait even longer to hit the opponent. And the other thing that's different about this, too, is that Yang recovers to the ground quicker, so it gives him a chance to do like that little reset there. Oop. I might want to get that. So you see there, a little bit of a chance for like a jab reset. It actually is not too bad of a source of stun too. If you see here, that's especially when you use the beam kick version. So when you get this, that's actually a pretty good chunk of stun damage without using meter. So that's another good source of stun to kind of complement the EX slashes. And of course you get this after the close beam kick. But other than that, you never really see rolls being used unless they're anticipating a fireball to come out, because these will go under fireballs, and then punish your opponent for that. Especially if you're going up against Denjin Ryu, and they're trying to do like a full screen Denjin for whatever reason, and they don't know the matchup very well. You can use this just right away, and that's just going to go under the fireball and hit them before the Denjin comes out. Unless they happen to get the timing just right and hit you as you're coming up. But that's kind of hard to really do consistently. Lastly, there are the palms. Right here, as you see. Quarter circle back. All three punches are actually the same, so there's really just a palm, which is this. And then there is the palm fake, which would be done as if you were doing an EX palm. So the thing that's interesting about this, it sort of goes over. I mean, it can go over lows. His hitbox actually does pull. His hitbox actually pulls back a little bit. So this can be kind of good to use when you're avoiding. If you're like right the tip range of Ryu's crouching beam kick, for instance, you can use this because as you can see, his front foot moves back a little bit to shift your hitbox just slightly back, and then hit them on the way back as you do the palm. This can also be used for like DPs as well, that you just come out of the range and then hit them on their way up. You can also use this as a way of like meaty pressure. If they're just gonna pack and use the DP right away, you use that to meaty it. And as you can see, the stun is quite good. It's really high actually. You can also use this as a poke because it is safe on block. There's a bit of pushback to it, but it is safe to use. So if you want to use something in the same vein as like the standing fierce, but maybe get that extra hit and do it more stun, you can use that. You can also use this to catch people dashing into you, and then if you're at the right range, you can get the follow-up with the standing fierce. And then of course you also have the fake as well, which again, maybe you've already used the palm once in the matchup. Now you use this to kind of keep them at bay because they're expecting it, and they will hesitate to do anything on wake up, and they'll just sit there and try to block. And then that's your opportunity to move in and grab them, move in and then command grab, even though it's a little bit far there, but you get the idea. Just any kind of like way to switch up your game. Maybe get them to flinch. This is another way too, if like you might be thinking they're going to do a DP, that you can use this just to shift your hurt box back a little bit, and then let them whiff in front of you, and then you punish them on landing. but there is no EX version of the Palm. It's just the Palm and the Palm Fake. So that will cover all of his specials. Let me just take a look at one thing here real quick. And we're actually going to start talking about his supers now. So let me go ahead. Take a look at something real fast. Okay. Alright, so let's change character real fast. Go over his 3 supers. So we'll start off with Super 1. Alright, so SA1. Pretty decent amount of damage. And you know what? Just for the hell of it, we'll go ahead and change the health to auto recover to kind of demonstrate damage values now too as we get further along. So super, fairly damaging. It's a 1-bar super, pretty big bar, but again, it kind of can, if you're using X slashes, it can drain pretty fast. So this isn't a super that you see used very often. There is one interesting distinction with the super, and that is that it is safe on block. So the first portion of the super itself, right here, on block, this will just come out and just tap them, of course, and then the rest of the animation won't actually go through with it. So because of this, he ends up being +1 on block. So as a super, like a reversal super in particular, it's pretty good to throw out because it has invincibility on startup, and if it hits, it gets good damage, and if it's blocked, then you are safe on block, and actually you're plus on block, so you can get out of a situation pretty easily. Now, in terms of its utility as far as getting combos, I mean, you know, you can't cancel out slashes to do the super. I mean, you can do stuff like this, like crouch and beam kick and a super. If you want to be a little fancy, you could do something like, I'll try to do this, but I can't really guarantee I'll get it done. Oop. There we go. Alright, got it. You can confirm it in something like that, for instance, with the close medium punch to standing leg kick, or you can do, you can also do short super, you know. The timing for doing leg kick, the short like this, it's a little weirder. So, because of the way, like how long this move is out for, it's a little harder to do that. So, I mean, yeah, it's possible, but it's pretty tricky to do, and it's not really necessary. So the super on its own merits is not too useful, although this is something that I talked with people with afterwards on my tutorial, that in a matchup particularly like with Denjin Ryu, this can be good to get out of a Denshin setup because of its invincibility. So typically, you know, you have the setup with Ryu where he knocks you down, he throws a fireball to try to force you to parry or block that, and then throws the Denjin at you so that you really have to red parry it, or you have to parry the first fireball and get the timing correctly. With this though, you can use that to basically go through both, because both of the fireballs with the invincibility hit Ryu out of the Denjin and actually capitalize on the damage and then move on with the momentum. It's also one other thing to note too is the positioning in which that you land in, because you switch sides with your opponent, and it's a hard knockdown, so they can't tech out of it. So there's a little bit of use out of it, but it's again like that's one of the rare times you'd use it. You can also use this to if you want against a Ganajin, Yun who's using Ganajin. I mean, what Yun doesn't use Ganajin, but particularly in that super, you can get away with using this and be safe. So there is something to consider when using a super. It's not totally useless, but it's also not something you could just universally pick in every matchup and get a whole lot out of it. Now we'll go over into the next super that we'll talk about, which is SA3 actually. So anybody who has played Alpha 3 will be very familiar with this super, because it's basically Vism. You have two shadows that follow behind Yang. Oh God, I can't even believe I just said that. But he has two shadows that follow behind him. All three of him and the other two shadows will hit. So it gives you pressure, kind of like an agent, but not quite the same. You don't get the juggle properties that you do with an agent, and you don't get the increased the sped up recovery time. So the combos that are possible with it are much more limited, and also because of the lack of a juggle combo, that also means there's a little bit of a lack of a post juggle combo to build meter for the next one around. Now there is a little bit of a trick you can do to build meter, and I'll talk a little bit more specifically about this super in particular because of its uses and also because of its combos that you may want to consider when using a super, and also why you would use a super in certain matchups. But again, it's decent combo tool, like when you get a full combo on it. It's a little tricky to do, so I haven't practiced that one in a while, but it's okay. It's mostly like in the same sense of Ganajin, of maintaining pressure, and particularly in certain matchups like Hugo and Urian, where they have like normals that keep you out a little bit and at a much farther distance, so that maybe you'll want to use something like SA3, so that when you do get in, you can maintain pressure and they can't press a button, and then maybe catch them off guard with that, and then also eventually, if they're turtling you too much, then hit them with a command grab and get at least a little bit of damage on the way out of the super. But as you can see, just like an agent, it's a 1-bar super with a very small bar, meaning that it does also build meter quite quickly if you hit with a slash, but it doesn't leave room for EX slashes. And then that leaves us with just one super left, and that will be SA2. Good old Tension Sekutai. So, as a super itself, it basically starts off just like the roll, and it functions like the roll too. It will go under projectiles. It knocks them up pretty high in the air, and also is another hard knockdown and lands you right on next to the opponent, gives you absolute perfect setup for any kind of Oki pressure. Now, of course, this means that this super is unsafe, because no matter what the opponent does, let's see if I can block it. Ah, okay. Well, even if it's blocked, you still go through the full super animation where you go up in the air. So you're a sitting duck if your opponent blocks at all. You're coming down, you're gonna land, and you're gonna get hit real hard. So if you're using this in like a reversal situation, just like a get off and move, because there is invincibility to start as well. Just be aware of that. You can't abuse that just like you can with SA1. But mainly the reason why you are even using the super anyway is because it's a 2-bar super, pretty good sized bar as you can see. That leaves you plenty of room for EX slashes, which is really the reason why anybody uses super anyway. They don't want to hit with the super itself. They'd rather go with the EX slashes for decent damage and also good stun build up. Now, you can use, if you want to use it in a combo, you can, like I said, like I showed you before. Damn. I can't get this out. There we go. Some damn diagonals. You can use that like a round closer, for instance, when you need just like a good chunk of damage, or you can use it, for instance, like if there's a stun after you have your opponent stunned and you want to hit him with like a target combo for some good damage, and to super to finish the round out, because the damage you see is not too bad. It's a little bit additional damage. It's not a ton, but it's still fairly good in the grand scheme of things when you count the whole entire combo. But other than that, like the super itself, you're never really going to use it outside of like a panic reversal to get out of a wake up an Oki situation. And then really again, like you're using it for the meter, so that you can use a lot of EX slashes. Now another thing to note too, since I didn't really talk about this before, is that you have the taunt there too. So you have the setup afterwards to taunt, and taunts also for Yang. It's a slight damage buff on the next attack. So if you see here, if I hit close mean punch here, a little bit of damage, you know. Oh shit! I hit him with the taunt. It'll do increased damage on the next attack. Just a slight bit of damage increase. I think it's only 1 point of damage. But nevertheless, you get a little bit of a buff. So when you do hit him with the super, whether it's in a combo or if you panic, you can, taunt and still have time. You have time to taunt and then do anything with Oki. All right, so outside of that, I think that'll cover everything as far as supers. Although, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit more about SA3 later on. So we'll briefly talk combos. So with the very simple ones we saw, you have slashes with crouching medium punch or medium kick, close medium punch, close spheres as your ways to do combos with slashes without meter, and then you could also use meter on those. On top of that, like I said before, you have standing light kick can go into a combo there. Crouching light kick, you can do 1, or you can also do 2 if you can confirm. There we go. You have close medium punch to standing light kick, and then let's actually we could probably get it to do it standing. You have universal overhead. I didn't get the last hit, but you can go universal overhead if you hit it deep like this. So if you hit kind of like that, and then hit light kick, but as soon as you land, you can confirm that into EX slashes. And then with jump-ins, you know, you have stuff like this. Yeah, you can go like this. You can do jump and medium kick and still land the top for a combo here. I think that does combo in certain situations there. And then with dive kicks, you can also combo off of these. If you hit them a little bit like more towards the shin, like as you see here, you'll land close enough where you can still get you'll land close enough where you can get medium punch, close medium punch. There we go. You can also do the same with like standing light kick, which gives you a little bit more, a little bit of a faster normal. Oop. And then you can do the same with crouching light kick too. So dive kicks are also powerful tools to start combos. If you get it to land, you hit it right at their shin, or even at the base of their ankle too. If you can get like that low, it's even better. So the further down you hit, the better and the easier is to combo. But you can't get a combo like hitting them high up in the chest or even on top of the head. That point, you know, that's pretty much it. You're only getting that one hit, and there's no way to combo from there. Not even if you were like to go right into super, it doesn't activate fast enough. Alright, now that'll wrap up all of the very basics of the character. Now it's time to start talking a little bit of strategy with Yang and how you actually want to go about and use this character. And we'll talk about several key aspects of his game. So the first, of course, is going to be the dive kicks itself. So like I said before, you have the 3 different dive kicks. They all travel at different distances depending on which kick you use, from light kick to medium kick to roundhouse. And because of this, there are a couple different uses that you can have for the dive kicks because of their flexibility. So the most obvious use to using dive kicks is for attacking. So of course here you're looking at, depending on your spacing, to dive kick and get that combo started with something like that, for instance. Or even if you're simply just, you want to, your opponent is going to do like any kind of like crouching normal, or maybe just a normal, or if you want to get in their face, you want to get them to start blocking, use this to close in the gap, get them blocking, get in their face, and then you can start your pressure from there. Now, because I'm talking about that, there's one important thing that you need to know about not slashes, but dive kicks, is that the lower they hit, the better they are in terms of block, and particularly if you hit them around the ankle or the shin, like right about there, you can actually be in a situation where you are plus on block, as opposed to if you hit them high up here in the chest or the head. If you use something like, well, actually all 3 of them, if you hit right on top of their head, you are minus if they were to block. If you hit, it's sort of even. It might be like -1 or -2 at that point when you land, even when you hit, but you're still considered safe. You can't get punished. But at the same time, it's not really good to just be hitting on the top of the head, because like I said, if they block here, then they can actually punish you right away. A Shoto, for instance, can just DP it right on block, for instance. Then you also have the issue of, let's say they don't have that, then they can hit you on the way down with like a crouching normal. So really, when you are using your dive kicks, you're always kind of aiming for the shin down here in one way or another as you're attacking. That way, if you hit, you get a combo, like you see there. And if you block, then you're actually in an advantageous situation where you're plus. And also, another thing too, when you consider it, is that, you know, because you're landing like this and you're landing low, because you're so close to them, let's say if you block, it keeps you in range to do a command grab, which is pretty vital when you're actually starting your attacks, because you know you can do something like this if you're hitting them. Now let's also assume that they're blocking there, so you know you're continuing pressure here, or you know do that. So yeah, so like as I was saying earlier, attacking is one of the uses that you can use for dive kicks. Another thing you can use dive kicks for is to bait out a reaction from your opponent. Specifically, if you change up your angle of attack, like with this, because at this point now you can kind of come in, and your opponent's thinking, oh, he's jumping in, he's probably going to dive kick, hit me in the face. I'm going to DP here, but then you can pump the brakes with a light kick, dive kick in particular. Oh, I'm doing it a little too early here, but you can pump the brakes, and they'll DP, but the DP will whiff at that point. And then, of course, and then when they're up in the air, they're landing, they come down, you punish them for it. So you can bait them in that sense. You can also bait, I mean, this is kind of indirectly baiting, but you can bait anti-air parries, meaning that you can use this to actually land in front of them, like so, where you don't hit, but you land in front of them. They're going to try to anti-air parry, but you're never going to hit them. That leaves them vulnerable to a throw, for instance, because you can't parry and throw at the same time. So you go ahead, do this, land in front, then you throw them right away, and then at the very least, you know, they're taking that little bit of damage. Conversely, you can also do something like do a dive kick into a crouching short into EX slashes and hit him with a full combo there, or you know, with something like close medium punch. And if you want to get even more tricky, you can just do the same thing and right into a command grab. So it's a good way to bait a reaction out of your opponent, whether it's an anti-air or if it's a parry, because you will also see people most of the time when they're trying to defend against dive kicks is the parry, because you know you're gonna take a little bit of time to land, and because of that you're gonna get punished real hard for it. And typically speaking, a lot of people who, when they play a twin character, whether it's Yang or Yang, kind of use dive kicks in only the one manner, which is attacking, and they don't switch up their approach and how they do it. So they're just going, like, for instance, they're always going to be at this range and just hitting roundhouse dive kick. So it's a very easy thing to see and parry right away on reaction. But if you kind of mix up your approach with it a little bit here, like even using the leg kicks, also jumping forward and switching up like this, for instance, so you're not always just neutral jumping and dive kicking, but jumping forward and dive kicking, you can really keep your opponent on their heels at all times. This is a tutorial, just to let you know. So I'm not fighting anybody because this is really just a tutorial to go over what the character does. Anyway, so on top of that, so kind of like to piggyback off the idea of baiting, another thing you can do with the dive kick is to delay it a little bit. So there is a close to when you hit the peak of the jump, probably much like right about here is when you can begin the dive kick. there's a certain range to when you can start the dive kick, but that also means on the way down you can dive kick as well. So if you see here, I'm going to slightly delay and on my way down dive kick. And this is important too because now maybe people are thinking, he's just going to neutral jump. He's not really trying to attack me at all. He's just doing this to like wait for my jump in. But then you catch them off guard just at the very last second, and then you go ahead and hit them, or you land right in front of them. So this also, because you're doing it a little late, you're changing the trajectory of the dive kick just a slight amount because you're waiting for it to go down, and so you cut the dive kick off a little shorter than normal because you don't have as much height. So this kind of goes along the same lines of baiting your opponent because you're making it look as if you're doing a neutral jump, and then you just hit him with a dive kick. And this is also another way to change your approach, even if you do want to attack, that they don't expect the dive kick at the same point of the jump at every single time. So normally everybody does it like right around this time. So if you wait a little bit, even on a forward jump, that again, it's just going to make them guess as if what you're trying to do at this particular time. And then to kind of take this even just one step further, then you also have the fact that you have normal jump-ins like this, which, at this point now, particularly if you're either neutral jumping or you're forward jumping and doing dive kicks, every once in a while now, you go ahead and you throw in a normal jump-in, because now they're kind of getting used to the timing of the dive kicks, which come in a little bit faster. Now maybe it's just like they're gonna they're gonna go for a anti-air parry with the timing of the dive kick in mind, but then you never do it, and then you come and you jump in. So again, it's just all part of the plan of you keeping your approach to your opponent varied as much as possible, because at that point they don't know what to expect at any given time when you're up in the air. And it's also important too, and I can talk about neutral jumping, because like I said, maybe every once in a while your opponent, what they'll try to do is, instead of just wanting to anti-air the parry with a grounded attack, they'll actually jump up in the air and do a air-to-air attack. So they'll do something like jump in roundhouse or whatever it is for each individual character, and they'll just stuff you out in the air before the dive kick even comes out. That's where a neutral jump, like a neutral jump fierce for instance, or even neutral jump roundhouse, will help you out in that department, where now it's just like, alright, yeah, you think you're going to come in, you think you're going to stomp out this dive kick, well, I got news for you, buddy. Hit him with a stop sign. On top of the way that you mix in your attacks and your approach on your opponent, dive kicks are also good just for a simple movement. So if I knock my opponent back all the way at the end here, I can use this to close the gap in a way that's much more effective than forward dashing, because I can pick the spot on the screen where I want to land. It's faster than a dash, of course, faster than any dash, even faster than Makoto's dash, and covers more ground. If your opponent, for instance, like at this distance here, if Ryu wants to throw a fireball, maybe I can't punish it right away, or unless I do something like the EX slash. Let's just say, for instance, I might think he's going to do a fireball. Well, even if I don't punish it, I can jump over, dive kick, close the distance, and at the very least get in his face. And at that point, he can't zone me out with fireballs. The same kind of idea can be applied to a character like Remy, who's going to try to lay me out with sonic booms, saying you just jump in, dive kick, and say fuck it. I'm just going to come in over the LOV and close the gap and start my offense right there, while maybe you just recovered from the sonic boom. But again, it's a good tool to get around the screen and just close the gap. Even on after slashes, you can use this as another way to close the gap afterwards, and not always using the teleport. And even with EX slashes as well. And then lastly, the other thing too to talk about the dive kick, which is you'll see this from time to time. You can use it to get out of the corner, and what I mean is this. So dive kicks can still be performed even when you aren't facing the opponent. Basically, if you're looking at it in this orientation, if this helps you get the idea of how I do this, is basically after I jump over them, I do down back instead of down forward, because technically speaking, when I'm on this side of the opponent in the air, hitting down back or down to the left, because we're going from left to right, technically is forward because my opponent is on this side of the screen now. Now, the character never actually, in this game, characters never actually change their orientation in the air to face their opponent on the other side, unlike Mortal Kombat, like the latest Mortal Kombat games do that. So when you jump in the air, you stay at that, you face in that direction the entire time. But that doesn't mean that you can't activate a dive kick. You just have to simply reverse the input, and you can use this as a way to quickly get out if your opponent gets a little bit lackadaisical, and you jump out and you get a little bit of space because of the dive kick. Gives you that extra momentum to get out and land quicker. Do be careful though. Some opponents will be a little keen on this, and they can, for instance, back up a little bit and then forward dash to close the gap. And if they space it properly where they are standing, they can punish you on the way down. So it's not a foolproof way to get out of the corner. It is a tool to be used, yes, but it isn't something that can be done 100% of the time, unless, of course, like I said, you kind of catch your opponent off guard by doing this when maybe they're trying to walk up and close the gap. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about slash pressure, which I have alluded to a bunch of times within this tutorial already. So if I set the dummy to guard all the time, so doing slashes on block, particularly doing just the first light punch slash, puts you in a quasi mix-up. Well, basically it's like a quasi post-hayate state. So if you're familiar with Makoto, when she does the hayate, the dash punch in a combo, it puts her at a range where, you know, she can do command grabs, she can do normals, and she's in your face and she has advantage. She's plus 1 or 2 on block, I think, if I got that correct. Somewhere along that neighborhood. Well, anyway, light punch slash is -1, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't continue the pressure afterwards, because you're at a pretty good space, as you see here, and there are a couple different things that you can do in response to what your opponent does. So, for instance, one of the easiest things that you could do is just do a crouching light punch right away. What this does is that you're just using it to kind of check your opponent, see what they might want to do after this. If they do nothing, then you're +1 and you get a little bit of momentum. But regardless, it's a safe option to use just to kind of see if your opponent, if they're going to still continue to block and hold down back, and you can kind of use that as information as you go along. If your opponent is keen to hitting a button after you do this, either way, you can do crouch light kick and EX slashes, because if they use anything like a medium punch, medium kick, whatever, this will actually beat it out in time because of its startup, and then immediately hit them with EX slashes. And now, because they attempted to retaliate, you hit them with EX slashes, you get a good amount of stun. They also they're probably going to be crouching at this point, so they're going to take a little bit extra damage on top of that too. So you have this. You have this, the EX slashes. You could also just simply do something like this, where you do this and then do another slash. So if they hit a button there too, they can hit, and then you can confirm it to a slash combo without spending the meter, unlike using crouch light kick or standing light kick. Either way works. to try to basically get a little bit of damage on your opponent. Let me see, what else? So on top of all that, then you can throw your opponent. But this is where I should also mention that Yang has a car throw. Well, he has two car throws, technically speaking. And they're performed with two different inputs. One is with the light kick here. There is a light kick car throw, and the way you do that, you see here, you quickly drum light kick to light punch, like very, very close to each other. You still want the light kick to come out a little bit first, so you hit that and then do the light punch very quickly afterwards. It's a very small window to do, but you can see here that he moves a little bit forward. So this is a car throw that you can use, but there is a more effective one. If you remember me telling you before that there is one use that you use for a standing roundhouse, well, this is it, because this is his actual car throw you want to be using. Because if you can already see the difference between the two car throws, oh, I messed up there, that one. There's about like 2 pixel difference between the two of them. So when you are using your slash pressure, for instance, you're at a range like right about here. You take a little bit of a step forward and you car throw. Then you catch them off guard, because at that point maybe they don't even retaliate, but it happens so quickly that they really won't react to it in time. The car throw itself doesn't have a ton of distance, but then when you consider the fact that his forward walking speed is really, really fast, it sort of looks like it's all one fluid motion, that it's all one big car grab. And I mean, it kind of is, because you only take like half a step forward, and then you do the car throw on top of it, but it'll kind of look like you never even moved and you just did the car throw. So the his forward walking speed really complements this very well and makes his car throw much more effective than what you would think, because you look at the distance, you say to yourself, this isn't that far. I mean, this is nowhere near Chun's level, so why would I want to use this? But because of his walk speed, it's pretty damn good. So this is another idea you can use in terms of like mixing up pressure after slashes. And then, you know, because we're also talking about throws, you can also, if they're really going to down back pretty heavily, go ahead and hit them with a command grab at that point, because then they're just going to be sitting ducks, and then you get a nice little free combo and you continue your pressure afterwards. Now, as I say this, there's a little bit of a trap that you can get yourself into, which is always canceling normals into slashes, particularly close medium punch and crouching light kick, medium kick, I should say, sorry. The trap is that if an opponent is pretty damn good at the game, they're gonna take some time out to learn how to red parry slashes, and that is one of the things that can absolutely shut down Yang's game entirely, because he kind of relies on slash pressure to continue to keep the distance close, and because, as I've already demonstrated, he has a couple different responses after a block slash. Your opponent really going to have to play a little bit of a guessing game, and a mistake can cost maybe a grab, maybe a throw, for instance. But then if you hit EX slashes, the stun builds up over time, and because he constantly keeps the distance close, that threat becomes more and more and constant. But one of the ways to get out of that is if they red parry the slash. But there is a way around this, and that is this. Now, to the naked eye, it doesn't look like much is different, but what I'm actually doing is slightly delaying the input of the slash, so that I actually cancel it just a little bit later than this. And it's about a frame difference, but because red parry windows are much tighter than regular parry windows, this is actually going to be the difference between you getting the red parry and then punishing me and hitting me for good damage, and then or you actually missing the red parry and now eating slashes, a little bit of damage, and a knockdown. So if your opponent is really good about constantly red parrying your slashes, actually use this in your arsenal a little bit. Every once in a while, whoops, slowing down the pace at which you cancel the slash so that they can't red parry it. And also, to kind of complement this as well, you don't always have to cancel the slashes either. Maybe sometimes you just do this and throw your opponent off, like, okay, where's the slash coming? It never comes. And in that way, you know, you can do, like, every once in a while, like, come in here or then do this, you know, keep them guessing. And the same with close medium punch, which before, as I said, you can't just like walk up like afterwards. You can. This is also a good tool for the car throw, by the way. Just like hit him with this. Don't always go into slash pressure. Just hit him with medium punch and then car throw. So that idea of not canceling the slashes, to an extent, is another way of adding on to a slash pressure per se, because you're not doing the slashes. They're expecting something to come out and they don't, and they're just sitting there waiting. So maybe they're going to second guess red parrying, or they're going to be like, what the hell is this guy doing? And they're just going to sit back there and wait anyway. One other thing to take note of in terms of slash pressure is actually a little bit of a weird, one of Third Strike's weird quirks in the game. So Chun, Ryu, and Q have 2 extra frames of block stun when they crouch guard, meaning that a slash that is -1 typically is now +1 on those 3 matchups in particular. So you can kind of use this fact, especially with like something like crouch and medium kick, to actually have even more momentum going for you. And because you're plus, they really don't have anyone to retaliate. It also should be noted as well that Q has 1 extra frame of block stun when standing. So whether he's blocking standing or crouching, it's more the slashes are better to use against him than any other character in the game, regardless. And then of course with Chun and Ryu, when they're crouching, it's a little bit worse for them in that sense. But if they're blocking standing, then there is no difference in the frame data afterwards. So that's another little thing that you want to take into consideration with those matchups in particular. Alright, so I did promise that we're going to talk a little bit about the follow-ups after slashes. So let's go ahead and do that. So with the wake-up frames of the characters being vastly different, there are some matchups that what you want to do is you don't always want to use the medium kick follow-up, teleport after the follow-up, because it actually puts you in a position where you could be punished for it. So when you are using slashes, in particular after EX slashes, anyone who has a quick rise, I should say, this is, by the way, quick rise frames of 48 or slower, then that means that you can use medium kicks teleport safely. The only characters who you can't do this against are Dudley, the twins, both Yun and Yang, because their wake up frames are the same, Makoto, Q, and Remy. They all wake up faster on quick rise than 48 frames, so by doing so, you're going to be punishable doing a medium kick or medium kick teleport. So let's go ahead and do auto to kind of demonstrate to show you. So you can see here that they're still waking up a little bit, so that means I have the advantage. But then other characters like the ones I just listed, they either get you even or even minus. Now, also do take note of the fact that this is factoring in when you do the teleport, because you want to do this as early as you can, because if you delay it about 2 or 3 frames, that's also going to affect what how safe you are on the teleport, or even if you are safe. So you want to do this as early as possible to ensure the largest window for you to continue pressure after EX slashes. And if you're not feeling confident about that yet, light kick teleport is safe against anybody in the game, regardless of what their wake up frames are. Granted, it doesn't travel very far. It closes the gap a little bit. God, I can't even do it. There we go. But like I said, you can't get as much pressure off of that, but you still remain safe and you still close the gap a bit. And then also, don't forget, you do have dive kicks. You do have super jumps. Oh. Yikes! Go ahead and do that. So, I mean, you can continue your pressure in other ways too. You don't always have to use teleports. And in fact, it's good for you to vary it up too, because then your opponent will not know what to expect every single time they get knocked down. You want to keep that varied approach. Like I said, just with dive kicks in general, you want to apply it to everything you do in the game. And I mean, that's how Third Strike works with every character, but when you have good mobility tools like what Yang has, it's even more important to use everything in your arsenal to change your approach. Now, in terms of using all of your other just the normal slashes, you only really want to follow up with the light kick teleport, because their medium kick teleport is a little bit unsafe against all the characters. However, Urien and Chun have such a slow wake up that even if you just do a normal slash combo and finish with a light punch slash, I should say, as well. Remember, you have to consider the fact that the other slashes have long recovery, but if you finish with light kick slash and go with a medium kick teleport, you're actually at an advantage there against Urien and Chun specifically, because of how slow they are to get up, even with quick rise. Alright, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about some things that you can do in terms of like Oki pressure and with knockdowns. So obviously there's going to be the fact that you can throw again after they get up and start a throw loop, because of how quickly you recover, and also how fast that you move in on them afterwards. So you can walk up, walk again, do that, get a little bit of a throw loop going. Beyond that, you have close medium punch and crouching medium kick or crouching light kick to deal with guest parry situations. So of course, close medium punch can only be parried high, this can only be parried low, that can only be parried low. So when you want to play that kind of game with them, you have that way to switch up the approach. So that way they can't just constantly guest parry you. They really have to think, what are you going to be using at this time? And perhaps they're not going to be wanting to use guest parries at all, because you have a good high-low parry game per se. On top of that, we talked a little bit about meaty pressure, with something like crouch and medium punch, which can set up a frame trap with close spheres, like so. And then I kind of talked about this a little bit, but another way to do that too is with crouching light kick, because the pushback is so minimal, as you see here, that it keeps me in range for a command grab. On top of that, I can still do this, and the other thing too is that both of these ideas also keep me in car throw range. So you can kind of keep your opponent guessing with this, and then command grabs. and then just frame traps, and then you also have the fact that you have the universal overhead, which I said before does confirm into a combo if you hit it deep and you do like standing leg kick. So it's a little tricky to do, especially on a standing opponent, but there we go. So you have that whole idea. Like I talked about before, you have something like palm, especially with the palm fake, to give the opponent the idea or that, hey, I'm going to attack you with this. They try to wake up with a reversal, and then they whiff in front of your face, and then you just simply go ahead and punish their mistake by having them land in front of your face, and you do any kind of combo that you want afterwards. Another little thing you can do, just especially in the corner, let me go ahead and turn off quick rise. Here we go. Because I want to show you that we can even demonstrate it here. It's a little tricky to time. I'm not the best at this, but that was actually a cross-up dive kick right there. So if you do this early enough, and I was a little too early, you can get a cross-up dive kick on your opponent as they're waking up. And so then you can also play this little game of which side is the dive kick going to land. Because you can still do it early enough and deep enough where you're going to get the combo afterwards, and now they have to guess which side to block on. So you can hit them, for instance, on the opposite side. I didn't get the close medium punch, but you get the idea. Or maybe I do something like just slightly like that, for instance, and do a meme kick, dive kick to stay on the same side, and now cause them to guess the cross-up. Plus, I would also say that most opponents don't really expect a cross-up dive kick, because like I said, and even like I've even shown, it can be a little tricky to time, and if you miss it, then you just corner yourself. You don't even get, they don't have to block it or anything, they just wake up and now you're cornered, and now they have the advantage to a degree because they can pressure you, and you're in a situation now where you have to defend yourself. You don't even have the momentum because you don't have the freedom to move around like you would want to, and also you also can't trap your opponent in with stuff like neutral jump fierce, so that if they're trying to panic and jump out because they want to get out of the corner, this is a really good normal to do that with. But when you're in the corner, well, I mean, this doesn't really do much except for prevent them from jumping in on you, which they're probably not going to do too often unless they want to set up a jump in. What else was there to talk about in terms of Oki? I think that does cover it for the most part. I already talked about defense. I mean, I have it on my notes here. I mean, like I said before, no invincible reversals to speak of, except for super. This again, of course, it comes out real fast, but it's not invincible at all. So you can't use this as a get-up option unless your opponent doesn't really meet you at the proper timing, in which they'll hit a button and they'll think it's invincible, but in reality they were just a little too slow. Otherwise, when you're waking up, I mean, like I said, because in this game you are thrown vulnerable for 6 frames after you, upon waking up, you can use crouching leg kick essentially to beat out a throw, because this is a 4-frame normal, and you get EX slashes afterwards to boot. So, God, there we go. So you get EX slashes and a decent amount of stun and the opportunity to start some offense. And then you also have close medium punch if maybe they're thinking, oh, he's going to do a low, so I'm going to wake up a low parry and then hit him with this. Other than that, there isn't a ton to talk about defense really when it comes down to defending as Yang. You're really just going to have to play very smart. You're actually going to have to play the type of defensive game where you're watching your opponent and you're waiting for an opportunity to parry, or maybe if they're walking around and they're pumping, like if they're looking for you to If they're looking for it to parry themselves, like they're waiting for you to hit like crouch and beam kick, maybe you hesitate pushing a button, let them pump the parry attempt, and then you just go ahead and hit them a little bit later. Alright, so I think that's going to wrap up all of that in terms of defense. Now we'll talk a little bit tech here as well. So the first thing I want to go over is the Zenpo tension option select. I'm going to change characters here for a second. I go here. Alright. So there is an option select that you can perform with the Zenpo tension. I'll show it here. Damn it. Alright, so let's set up right here in the corner. So let me just training options. We'll go to record. Let me just make sure that quick rise isn't on. Okay, good. So there's an option select that you can do with Yang with the Zenpo tension, which is the command grab, as a way to negate a few different options for your opponent on wake up, and I'll show how this works. So let me go ahead and set this up to record again. Alright, let's just see if I did it properly. Alright, replay. Just gotta get to the other side of him. This is the one little pain in the ass about this training mode in particular. Alright, let's see if I did this. It's kind of hard to do in this training mode, but I'll try to demonstrate as much as possible. Alright, did it. Okay, good. Okay. Alright, I successfully did it on my first try. I'm a little amazed myself. Okay, so let me go ahead and pause this and get all the noise out so I can... Because this is a little bit more complicated, that maybe I should just do like a nice little sit-down chat with you guys and talk about what's going on here and how this actually works. So the Zenpo tension option select, what I am doing is this. I am on an opponent's wake up. What I'm doing is I'm doing the Zenpo tension the movement for the move itself, which is the half circle back. And then what I do is I actually wait a little bit, because in this game there's a little bit of a time after you input a special that you can still cancel into it and it'll still count. So what I'm doing is I'm delaying when I do the input for the kick. But on top of that, what I'm doing is I'm actually inputting throw, so I'm hitting light punch and light kick at the same time. Now what this does is that if an opponent wakes up and they do anything like what you just saw the DP, which I just when I first demonstrated it, because you wait just a little bit before you input the throw command, you block. And then if the opponent does a throw attempt, then because, as I said, instead of just doing a kick to do the Zenpo tension and I input throw at the same time, then what happens is that I get a throw tech there. And then if the opponent does absolutely nothing at all, then I get a command grab. So basically you're defending against a reversal first, a throw attempt second, or any kind of crouch tech, and then lastly you're doing a command grab when they do nothing else. So this is a good option to use when you're kind of unsure of what your opponent is going to do on wake up. So there, of course, like I said, because I delay the input for the throw, it actually gets the block. But do realize this though, the reason why that one time it failed is because if I delay the reversal just a little bit, I can beat out the whole entire option select, because it's kind of predicated on you expecting them to do it at a reversal timing, and also because there isn't a whole lot of time that you can still wait between the half circle back and the kick to do the throw, to do the grab, that if they delay a little bit, they can still beat it. So I should also say that this isn't entirely foolproof. There are a couple ways to beat this. Number one is that you can beat it by, like I just showed you, delaying a reversal. So actually don't even get reversal time and just wait like a little bit of like a frame or two, and then doing a DP or whatever. Then you hit them out of it. If you wait a little bit and throw them, it'll get past the point where the throw tech doesn't count, and you hit them, and you actually throw them out of the command grab, because at that point the command grab animation will start, and then you'll throw them out of it. And then lastly, because I'm only holding back, you can beat them with a crouching short or any kind of low attack. So there are a few things it doesn't defend against, but mainly what it is doing is, if you're expecting, or if you're thinking that there might be a reversal coming out, you use this idea, and then it keeps you safe from that, plus a throw tech. And if they don't do anything, then you get a command grab, and you continue pressure from there. So that is mainly when you want to use it, and that's how you use it. So it's nothing that you can abuse either, because another thing I would say to do too, in certain situations, and this is just a general rule. Let's just go back to playing as Yang now. Like I said, this is a general idea in playing Third Strike, that sometimes you just, in an Oki situation, you don't want to do anything. You kind of just want to let the opponent wake up and then just delay everything. And then maybe just like sit here, wait for them to do something. If not, walk in, throw them, or whatever. Beyond that, so there is an SGGK with him. I'm not very effective with it, but basically it's the same idea. I don't even think I'll be able to demonstrate this, but I'll just tell you how it works. You input forward, down, back, like I showed you before, to basically get the Zenpo tension, but you do forward, down, back, and then you do medium kick, and then you like kind of car throw, like a car throw time you hit throw. So basically what happens is you get forward parry, low parry, and then back to block if they do a reversal, or if you don't get the parry, you get the block. If you get the parry, the close medium kick comes out because you're at that range, and then you hit them with that, and then just do a combo or whatever. And if nothing comes out, it actually counts as a command grab input. I can't. I've tried using it before, and I can't really get it to work. So I'm not. I wish I could show you guys that, but I haven't really practiced it enough to show on this tutorial. But I at least wanted to throw that idea out. And then, I mean, for my personal play style, I really don't use SGGK at all. Maybe that's to my detriment, but I always try to outsmart my opponent and utilize tools, just basic knowledge and tendencies to beat my opponent, rather than trying to use too many option selects, because they can become a crutch, and all option selects in this game can get beaten. So it's not like Street Fighter 4 where option selects were much more rampant and much harder to deal with. Third Strike, yeah, there are option selects in the game, but there are ways to get around them. And also, the other thing too, I should say, another way to beat out the two option selects I just talked about, because we're talking about using a command grab, is that your opponent can jump away from this animation too. So keep in mind that at any time, if they're also sensing the idea that maybe you're going to do a command grab because they've been blocking for a while, they're going to jump. Sometimes they just jump back or neutral jump. Either way, they want to jump out and then be in a range where they can come down, because this animation does take a little while and you're vulnerable to an attack on their way down from the jump. So I should also mention that too, as far as part of the Oki game, is that there are going to be times where they may want to jump. So this is where stuff like just like close medium punch or even close medium kick become valuable tools, because if they're jumping in particular, and you hit them with close medium kick, they're actually in a really bad spot. Because let me see if I can probably demonstrate it here even with Ryu. Let's do jump. Oh, almost. I mean, I'm doing a little too soon. Yeah, too soon. See, that's a combo that only happens when the opponent is already up in the air. You can't do that combo just doing medium kick, palm, and then whatever afterwards when the opponent is grounded, because they don't get launched high enough so that they can still be in the air for the palm to land. But when they jump in the air and then they get launched with a close medium kick afterwards, they're flying real high, and then you can hit them with a palm, and that is a ton of stun. And if you hit the standing fierce afterwards, you're looking at let's actually take a look at it now. Try to land it with no stun at all on Ryu. See how much it is, because it is a hell of a lot of a stun to deal with, off of a meterless combo too. So that alone, just the 2 hits alone, was around 50% stun. And if I had the standing fierce to land, oh. Yeah, you're probably looking at 50 to 60% stun just from them trying to jump away from you, and you spent no meter. And then when you're talking about actually continue on with your pressure and maybe get an EX slashes in there, or just even regular slashes, which still do a decent amount of stun, yeah, that becomes very scary very quick. Okay, let's see what we have. Okay, here's another little bit of tech for you. We have to change characters for this. Let's go ahead, do this. Alright, so a little funny thing here with the command grab. So like I said before, with the command grab, normally what you do afterwards is do crouching like medium kick and slashes, right? Either normal or EX slashes. But in a few matchups, there's actually something else you could do. Ain't that sweet? So basically, what's happening here is because of Chun's animation, she actually reels back to the point where she can actually activate the close medium kick. And so as a result, and this matchup, for instance, it becomes really deadly to get hit with a command grab in mid-screen, because as you see here, I'm resetting and I'm right in front of her, and basically now I get the opportunity to do anything I want on to continue the pressure. I was going to say as a wake-up situation, even though it's not, but basically it kind of acts like that. And then, you know, the other kicker with it too, I'm in range to do it all over again. If my opponent was really lazy and did nothing the entire time, I could just kill them doing that over and over and over again. Although eventually they're going to either jump away or reversal or do something, right? But or even attempt to parry if I want to do like something like this or this. But generally speaking, this is really deadly in this matchup. And so there's a couple of characters that you can actually do this with. So obviously Chun is one of them. Makoto and Q also get hit with this. And then you actually don't really see this that often, but this can work as well, is with Ibuki and with 12. Let me actually demonstrate that, if I can, with one of them. Alright. So here we go. Whoop. It's a little tricky, but I can get it to work. Alright, it didn't work that time. It's so it's possible to her. It's kind of difficult, as you can see, because it's like you really got to get it in there. I wouldn't say it's practical, but it can happen. But it does also work with 12. Maybe I should show him instead. Now that I think about it, because I'm failing in front of my own tutorial. Ain't that the greatest? Alright, but we can do with 12.
Let's go. Prepare to strike. Now.
And you see that actually comboed. So at 12, you take a little bit of a step forward. That time that one didn't. So there you go. So it does work with 12 as well. The other two characters I mentioned, Makoto and Q, don't require the small step forward. Now, on top of that, there's another thing you could do after the command grab with those characters. Is that you can walk forward a little bit and then do close medium punch, as opposed to just doing crouch and medium kick and continue with the combo. The reason you do that is for a little bit extra stun with the close medium punch. That's really the main reason for it. It's just a little bit more stun. So that's another thing you can do with those characters. So for that, again, it's Q, Makoto, Chun, and 12. Ibuki, I mean, it's possible, but it's really tricky to do, to the point where I wouldn't really recommend it. And now moving on from that, there's another thing you can also do with the palms, which we'll go back to Chun. There we go. Alright, so Kikosha, we're not going to worry about the super here because we're not really using her for anything except for a dummy. So some characters, because of their falling hitbox, allow you to do something else to juggle characters after doing palms. Normally what you see me doing is this, which is this one is pretty much universal across the cast. There we go. And also turn off stun for the time being, because now I think that kind of demonstrated all we need to with stun at this point. Okay, so now with a character like Chun, you could do this. Ooh. That's weird. Come on, slower. Oh. Oh, you know what? She's dead. That's why she's not getting hit. But you can do you could do like a little juggle afterwards, where you're actually there we go. That's more like it. So you can do that 3 times total. You can do 2 slashes 3 times. If I can get it to land. It's a little tricky to do consistently, but you know, you could do like even just like 2 reps. Or you could do 1 set of just complete slashes. Or you could do like 4 slashes and then standing fierce. I think that's kind of like it for that. So it's a combo that can work after Palm with Chun, Q, Elena, Necro, Alex. Oro, I just couldn't get the last rep to actually work at all. I'm not sure exactly why. So you can't do like the full 6 reps, but I mean you can end it with a standing fierce, which of course gives you plenty of. There we go. Which gives you plenty of stun. But yeah, those are the characters that you can do that little juggle in the corner afterwards off of this. But remember, like I said before, the target combo, you don't recover at the same time. So you can't actually get the juggle after the target combo. It's only after the palm itself, the normal palm. Alright, and then lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about SA3 in depth. Because this is a little bit of a, not a tricky topic, but this is, I would say this is the most, I didn't mean to change level, but that's fine. We'll go back here. Here we go. If there is anything that would be considered high execution with this character, which isn't necessary to use, again, you don't have to use SA3 at all, and there are people who don't use it at all. There's some kind of cool stuff that you can do with this super in general that's a little bit more execution heavy, but it is pretty damn neat, in particular with Hugo especially. So first, let's talk about the unblockable that you actually get off of SA3. So there's an unblockable that you can get with this super that's only really effective on tall characters, and in particular, in my experience, Hugo obviously is the best character for this. He's the tallest in the game in terms of not just his height, but also his wide hitbox. Then you have Alex, and then Alex also is pretty effective with this. Actually, you know, it's Urian is pretty good with this. Alex, pretty good too. But most of the time when I use the super, I'm really only using this for, or at least I'm using the unblockable, I should say. I only really use this against Hugo because he's the most consistent to hit it with. And the unblockable works like this. I'll turn off blocking to show what it should look like when it hits. Alright, so here we go. Oh, my bad. Just let this run out. Jump the gun a little bit. There we go. Alright, so what's happening there? Let's go ahead and show this one more time to kind of give you an idea. So basically, this is how the unblockable works. what you do is on a knockdown situation, particularly when you're not too far away from them. So with that medium, close medium kick to medium kick roll combo that you see there, or if you have them cornered and you get a full slash combo on them, you're in good position to do this. And basically what happens is this. You activate Super 3 and you do a dive kick over Hugo, and you want to land on the other side of him. But what happens is that the shadows from the super still hit him on the one side that you jump from, while you do crouching medium punch, I should say, to hit Hugo from the other side. So what you do is you have dive kick and medium punch hit at the same exact time, or close to it, roughly speaking. So that way, they block the dive kick, but then they don't block the medium punch, and then everything else combos, and even the sweep actually does combo with it too, because the other shadows still hit, and the medium punches also hit and continue it. So that's how the unblockable works. And the times that you want to use the unblockable, like I said before, is like either with this to medium kick roll, or if you're in a or on a corner, like I said. I mean, because look at this. I mean, I didn't get the 4 jump there, but you get the idea. Like, because I'm right in front of his face, and I already have. There we go. Well, you get the general gist of how it works. You just knock him down. And that should pretty much be it. So that's how the unblockable works. Hugo is very easy to hit this with. Yuri and Alex are tall characters who can get it to work, but they're a little bit smaller, so there's a little bit less room for error, which is why I would never really use the unblockable against them two, at least for my level of execution with it. Because even I still mess it up with Hugo himself. So I'm not even 100% foolproof in this regard. But even then, SA3 still has its merits. And we'll get a smaller character in here to kind of demonstrate that as well. Let's beat up on somebody else for a change. So let's beat up on Mr. Gutter Trash himself. So besides the fact that you have the unblockable. Oh shit! Did I pick the wrong super? My bad. It just comes out of habit of just picking SA2. There are some other combos that you can do, and actually just do like a really long extended combo with SA3 that you can do just outside of the fact of just outside of the unblockable itself. So the way this works is you have. Let's go ahead and activate it now. I'm gonna try to get this. I think I cut it 1 rep short. I missed the one same line kick. Damn. I haven't practiced this in a while, so I might not be the most efficient with it. Almost had it there. Let's do it one more time. I pretty much had it down. I can't get that last one, but basically that's a universal combo that you can use for SA3. So basically what you do is, I mean, because you can't combo off of activation, which would be kind of cool. Actually, hold on. Let me, oh shit. I didn't go there. One more. Yeah, so you can't combo off the activation like you can with an agent, which kind of sucks. That's also another reason why this super isn't quite as effective. But basically, all I'm doing with this combo is messing it up. But when I'm not messing it up, and when I actually get it right, all I'm doing is doing 2 slashes. Usually I do heavy punch to light punch, and then doing a standing light kick and doing another rep of 2. And because the SA3 with the shadows is doing each one, is hitting on top of it, it allows that to actually combo. Where normally, of course, as you can see, it's not comboing here, technically speaking. But let me also training options. Let's put this to auto guard. That way, you know when you're dropping a combo. But because of the super, that actually allows everything to combo, and you can go ahead and do like I think it's like 3 reps of it. Yikes! I can't believe I'm messing this up as much as I am. But I do want like 1 more rep of that, just the same leg kick, and then finish up with a full slash combo. But I think you get the general idea. That is a universal combo that can work on any single character in the game. Usually what you'll do is to kind of start it off, like maybe you'll activate and then you'll jump in with target combos, especially because of the shadows. Oops. So you can see that even if they were to block it or try to parry, they have to block all these different hits together. So that's like a free way to get in with the super when you activate it from a distance and continue pressure from there. And if you hit them, then you got a nice little combo going for yourself. On top of that, there is another combo that you can do with this that actually involves the target combo. And it's a little, so you know what, hold on. Let me see, trying to remember how I did this. Damn it. I think it was a light punch, but it's the same kind of idea, except you do the target combo, light kick, medium kick, heavy kick, and then you do fierce punch slash to light punch slash. So you go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and then you just do that a couple times. I think it's 3 times total you get, and then you get a complete combo off of that. Now that works for a good number of characters in the game. So what I've come across that you can do it fairly consistently with are the Shotos, the twins, Remy, Dudley, of course, because we see him here, Chun, Ibuki, Elena, Makoto, Hugo, 12, and Alex. Other characters you can kind of do it with, but it might whiff on like the second rep, so I wouldn't really recommend it for those. I would just recommend doing the universal combos for those, for the rest of the cast. But again, for the ones that you can do this combo loop, and also I should say this is in the corner too, because you can't do this mid-screen. It's the Shotos, the twins, Remy, Dudley, Chun, Ibuki, Elena, Makoto, Hugo, 12, and Alex. Now, one last thing I want to talk about with the super is there sort of is a way to do like a little bit of a Ganajin follow-up to get more meter at the end of the super, but it doesn't really work the way you think it does. So what you could do is, let's just say for instance I do actually I can land this combo. What you do is, instead of actually going through with the entire combo, and by the way, I just can't believe I did that all in one shot and properly, so congratulations to myself, and I'll never do this again. Anyway, as I was saying, one of the things that's a little bit strange about what I'm doing here is that as opposed to continuing the entire combo and finishing it up, what I do is instead I let the combo drop, and then I walk up with a command grab. So that way, basically, if I kind of show you, let's see if I can get it to, if I can manage to do this without messing us up and demonstrating how much meter I get. Ah. All right. Oh, I did that one. Duh. Okay, my bad. Alright, I get a free try at this. Let's try it one more time. Ready? Here we go. And that's not it. There we go. Well, I mean, I whiffed the command grab, but that's basically the idea. So, you allow the combo to drop, and as you can see with the amount of meter I have now, I'm looking at 45%, I'm going to say, just eyeballing the meter for the next SA3. So you don't get any kind of juggle, but what you can do is you can let the combo drop, and you can do the command grab and get that, or I mean, let's just say, for instance, you do this more than once and they get the idea, hey, he's going to drop the combo and jump, or command grab here, I'm going to jump away, and then you could do like close medium kick, or you can do anything else. Like if you, basically what you're doing is you're utilizing the super to create a reset situation right when the meter is about to run out, and then you just work in a mix-up of some type to get a little bit of meter after you're done with the super itself. Because if you just complete the combo, you really don't get anything afterwards at all. I mean, you get a little bit for the slashes, but as you, if I can just show you, there's very little meter that builds on the last 2 slashes. It's almost non-existent. That most of the meter it's built is off the first slash alone, as you can see here, and how much it just went up. So the idea is that in a regular combo, the super meter will run out after the first slash. So it'll still be there, and it'll end like when you do the last 2 slashes, meaning that you're going to get no meter out of those. But if you end it early and then create a reset situation for yourself, you could do something like take the opportunity of walking up, getting a command grab, and then, you know, hitting them with that and getting a lot more meter for it. Now, all things being considered, with this approach, you don't get a lot of damage off of the combo itself, and even if you drop it to do another command grab to slashes, you're still not getting a lot of damage. So I wouldn't really say it's a great idea to use in a lot of matchups. There are people who specialize in SA3, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that their idea isn't valid. It might work for them, but I would probably say that Yang is not really built for that. However, if I were to recommend it in some situations, I would definitely say with Hugo because of the unblockable, Urian and Alex as well for the unblockable. But even see, the thing with Alex is that you don't have to fight him with the unblockable in mind. You actually get really good pressure on him anyway. You can really rush him down. But Urian is another character who I would even say that is actually pretty effective to use SA3 against, just because of the nature of the matchup, where he likes to build meter first from a distance and wait until he has enough meter for Aegis to start his offensive pressure. And also because his normals are really built more for a keep away game because of how long they are and how much reach they have. He'd rather just build meters safely. Um, and also that means in terms of when you're trying to pressure him, he can hit you at ranges similar like how Hugo can hit you at a long range to keep you from getting in. Granted, it's nothing threatening, it doesn't lead to any specials, but it can still annoy you, it can still keep you at bay and keep you honest at a further distance. So SA3 is kind of good because you still get some sort of offensive pressure in a similar manner to Canadian, but you don't get it. It's not quite as damaging and it's not as scary, but it still at least will give you this bit of time to uh, hit them up close for at least a little bit of damage. And if you manage to somehow get, like the command grab and then a little bit of meter afterwards, that you can continuously put them in that situation. So there is a little bit of use for SA3. You can, if you want to be fancy for the combos, by all means go ahead and do that. Just for fun, I wouldn't really consider trying doing that seriously. But in the Hugo matchup and the Urian matchup, I would even say it's useful just for the fact of the pressure that you get off of it. But I think that's going to conclude this Yang tutorial. See, have anybody in here hanging out? I think we're good to go here. So, for anybody who watches this, I'm going to put this up on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. I'll go ahead and answer whatever I can in any kind of manner I can. Be sure to also, if you want, to hit the follow button both for my YouTube channel and for my Twitch, so that way when you guys, if you guys have any other questions about Third Strike and maybe you want to see a tutorial on something that I can confidently speak about, I'll be more than happy to produce that content for you guys. I'll also go ahead and, if I haven't done so already, I'll put timestamps in the different sections of this tutorial because this is a long video, and so that way you guys can jump around to the stuff that you really want to see the most and what you need to look at in case you ever want to go back to this. So I'm going to thank you guys very much for watching this video. Hopefully you guys learned some really cool stuff out of it and you can utilize this in your gameplay. And if you are someone who has trouble in this matchup, maybe I gave you guys some pointers that will help you out in the long run to learn how to play against Yang. Until then, take it easy guys, and maybe I'll see you soon some other time.